What's up everybody, we're back on the Shadowlands beta and today we'll be taking a look at Vengeance Demon Hunter. I'll be going over what's new, what's old, the new Covenant systems and overall feel of the spec and gameplay. And the standard beta disclaimer. This is beta, so a lot can change and a lot of this will be my personal opinion, so do with that what you will. Now with that out of the way, let's start off with what's new. Not a ton to be honest, since this class and spec is still fairly new. There's not a lot of abilities to bring back. So mostly there's tuning, more tuning, and some tuning that's been done. However, Fell Devastation is now baseline. On a 1 minute cooldown, costs 50 fury and does a ton of damage and healing. I mean, if you've played with it as a talent, then you know it. Either way, it's very nice to have this baseline both as another fury spender as well as a DPS / healing cooldown. And there's a new-ish talent to go with it, namely Demonic. Fell Devastation causes you to enter demon form, so meta, for 6 seconds after it finishes to deal damage. So with this we can hop into our demon form a bit more often outside of the 3 minute meta cooldown. And it's not an RNG proc like Gluttony, which has now been removed. And sure, it won't be like BFA with essences and corruptions and insane uptime on the meta. But either way, Fell Devastation and Demonic works very well. On top of this, Fiery Brand now also leaves a dot on its target, so a bit more damage from it overall. And there's also the old Azurite trait Revel in Pain. When Fiery Brand expires on your primary target, you get a shield that absorbs damage for 15 seconds, based on your damage dealt to them while Fiery Brand was active. So we get to keep that from our otherwise borrowed power in BFA. But other than this, it's mostly tuning and target caps that's been added. One such is 5 target cap on Soul Cleave, which I'm not really sure why it's a thing. Threat on pulls that are greater than 5 can be a bit bothersome with only Soul Cleave. Seeing as Sigil of Flame, Immolation Aura, Infernal Strike don't do that good of a job as far as instant threat goes. Outside of that, Soul Cleave does a good job on its own without Spirit Bomb, but above 5 targets, threat can become an issue. So, let's hop into our talent tree instead. First row, Abyssal Strike has merged with Flame Crash, but we've lost the 10-yard increase on Infernal Strike. So now it reduces cooldown by 8 seconds and creates a Sigil of Flame where you land. Agonizing Flames, Immolation Aura now increases your movement speed by 20% and duration is increased by 50%. And Razor Spikes has been removed and Fellblade has jumped up here instead, which works the same as before. Merging Flame Crash with Abyssal Strike is a nice quality of life change. I'll miss the 10 extra yards though, but it was already a very good talent, so one can see why they felt the need to take something away from it if they were going to merge it with Flame Crash. And the new Agonizing Flame, which increases Immolation Aura, can be very good as it synergizes with, for example, the Conduit Growing Inferno, which increases Immolation Aura's damage by 10 to 25% depending on rank anytime it deals damage. So more duration, more damn. And one of our new talents, Infernal Armor, which increases armor by 20% and causes melee attackers to take damage while Immo Aura is active. And the talent Shard Flesh, which has been reworked, Immolation Aura now increases the duration of your Fiery Brand by 0.5 seconds. So I mean, it has a lot of synergies and will definitely have its uses. Moving along, we have Infernal Armor, which I just mentioned. It's instead of Flame Crash in the 3rd row. Together with the reworked Shard Flesh, and Spirit Bomb has been moved up here as well. So it's a pretty decent row all in all. All of this gives out more damage in different ways, as well as more survival either through armor, longer Fiery Brand, or Spirit Bomb's healing. On the 6th row, we now have Demonic instead of Gluttony. Demonic, like I mentioned earlier, when you finish casting Fell Devastation, you go into demon form for 6 seconds. And like I mentioned earlier, I personally like Demonic a lot. However, I wish Fell Devastation was on a shorter cooldown. It used to be on a 45 seconds cooldown on beta, but was recently increased, and even at 45 seconds, I would have liked it more often. But 45 seconds still felt okay. 1 minute is fine without Demonic, just a DPS healing cooldown, but with Demonic, I would have liked it to be a shorter cooldown, or even better, just make Demonic baseline, because it really makes sense in our toolkit. Now, Void Reaver and Soul Barrier has been moved up here as well, instead of Spirit Bomb and Fell Devastation. And for the last row, we have 2 new talents, Ruinous Bulwark and Bulk Extraction. Last Resort is still here. Now, Ruinous Bulwark, Fell Devastation heals for an additional 15%, and 50% of its overhealing is converted into an Absorb Shield, build. Overall, it sounds interesting. 15% increased healing means when you use it to heal, it heals more. And if you pop it on max HP or close to it, all of that healing won't be wasted. Hard to say where the biggest gain is though. Absorbs are usually a lot stronger than healing, as it's damage prevented. So with this one, the play might turn out to be using it on full health just to cheese the large absorb, which for me sounds a bit weird, but also if picked with demonic, a lot of its value is reduced as you'll come out of Fell Devastation with meta, so you already take so much less damage. So adding a big absorb on top of that might just be overkill or underkill. But without demonic, I can see the appeal of it. But then again, there's last resort on this row, so. Then we have bulk extraction, 1.5 minute cooldown. Demolish the spirit of all those around you, dealing X amount of fire damage to nearby enemies, and extract 5 lesser soul fragments, which you immediately nom up. In short, a very long cooldown for a bit of AoE damage and the healing of 5 fragments. Cooldown seems excessively long for what it does, to be honest. However, when survival isn't needed at all, it is the only DPS option in that row. But for high keys or progression, last resort will probably be our first resort. So yeah, as far as unpruning and new abilities, there's not a ton here. Talents have seen some overhauls, nothing crazy, but mostly for the better, I'd say. Now, with that said, let's hop onto the covenants. Starting off with Kyrian, which gives you Elysian Decree and Summon Steward. Elysian Decree, a new sigil, 1 minute cooldown, activates after 2 seconds, 30-yard range. Detonates, dealing a ton of damage and shatter up to 3 soul fragments from enemies affected. So just a nice on-demand AoE smack, which also gives you souls to nom on. Since it is a sigil, it works with anything that affects our sigils, like the talent Quicken sigil. All in all, nothing spectacular, looks dope, does a ton of damage, and starts you off with a healthy amount of souls to nom on. It was pretty fun to play with though, as it doesn't have a very long cooldown, and that instant burst damage feels good and helps out with threat on bigger pulls. Lord knows soul cleave ain't cutting it. Still works well on single target as it does a decent amount of damage, and the extra soul every 1 minute isn't groundbreaking by any means, but hey, beats just being a damage sigil. In all fairness, it really is a great ability. Ton of damage, low cooldown, AoE, does a decent amount of damage on single target. What more do you need? Now the signature ability, Summon Steward, which allows you to vendor stuff, change talents, but more importantly gives you 3 vials of Serenity, which are on a separate cooldown from Healthy Pot and Stones, heals you for 15% of your max HP and removes curses, diseases, poison, and bleed effects on use, which there are a lot of. There's some especially nasty bleeds in the new raid which you can remove with this, which is awesome. Now, next out is Necrolord, Father to the Flame and Fleshcraft. Now, Father to the Flame has been changed a few times already, so not sure how it will end up. Current iteration, on a 2-minute cooldown, commission a duel to the death against a condemned demon. Vanquishing your foe releases its demon soul and creates a pool of demon blood for 30 seconds. Standing in the pool increases your attack speed by 10% and damage taken is reduced by 10%. And like the tooltip says, on death it releases a demon soul, so nom that up and you get 20% damage increase for 15 seconds. So it's a bit all over the place, this one. And it has a few obvious drawbacks, big one being you spawn an extra mob that you need to smack down, since everything is tied to you defeating the enemy. So if you time this one for something, be it a DPS burn or to take less damage, you might run into issues like the ad dying too slow, which hopefully won't be a thing if it's tuned with low HP. But if it's a mob you just smack once and it dies, it kinda defeats the purpose of the mechanic behind the ability, which is challenge and defeat a demon to get a buff, which, spoiler alert, is what Maldraxxus is all about. Defeating your enemy and bathing in the blood of your enemy. And all those things aside, it's still not a great buff. There's nothing game-changing about it. 10% attack speed, not haste, I guess. And 10% damage reduction, I mean, better than not having it. But no encounter will ever require a 30-second long 10% damage reduction. So what you're really left with is the 20% damage damage increase for 15 seconds from nomming the demon soul, which we have kinda nothing to pair with it to take advantage of it. I mean, pop meta, do a bit more damage, throw off fiery brand to min-max that DPS during the 20% damage increase and end up without defensive cooldowns when you do need them. I mean, maybe fell dev. But all in all, I'm not super hyped about this one. I feel like someone went, oh, you know what would be cool? If you as a Necrolord demon hunter summon and fight a demon, following the true Maldraxxus spirit, being victorious, you get buffed. Oh my god, yes, we're so doing that. And then you play it and it's like, signature ability, Fleshcraft, 2-minute cooldown, 4 seconds channel, which you cannot dodge or parry during. Absorbs damage equal to 20% of your max HP, and the absorb lasts for 2 minutes. Channeling this near corpses claims their essences to grow the shield up to 50% of your max HP. Stronger mobs, bigger gains. Overall, as a tank, this is pretty wonky at best. Sure, there's always moments to channel, but you'll never get the most out of this unless you channel it mid-combat. And you lose more health channeling this when a pack smacks you than you gain from the absorb. However, there are some soul binds that work with this, like getting buffs from the enemies you consume with this, which will make it a lot stronger. Next out is Venthyr, Sinful Brand and Door of Shadows. Sinful Brand, 1-minute cooldown, branded enemy with the mark of the Venthyr, reducing their melee attack speed and casting speed by 30%. It also deals a metric ton of damage over the course of its duration, which is 8 seconds. On top of this, activating meta will apply Sinful Brand to all nearby enemies. Now currently the amount of damage this one does is pretty insane, but not only does it do a ton of damage, the attack and cast speed reduction is pretty big from a defensive perspective. I just wish there was another way to spread it than popping meta, as the defensive part isn't needed as much during meta as it is outside of it. On top of this, currently it does not proc from demonic, so not when you go meta by using Fell Devastation. So the use for the AoE spread is purely for some crazy DPS. Sure, taking less damage is almost never a bad thing, so it's not useless during meta, but if they do tone down the damage on it, I hope they give us another way of spreading it. But seeing how we share this with Havoc, we probably won't. Overall though, even as a single target ability, it's very good. Low cooldown, great damage, and damage reduction. It's just sad that you spread it with meta, that's all. Door of Shadows, 1-minute cooldown, 1.5 second cast, 30-yard teleport. Not super great for us mobility wise, but if it turns out that there's a lot of mechanics that can be skipped with this in dungeons and raid, its value will go up. Now, lastly, we have the Night Fae, which gives us the Hunt and Soul Shape. The Hunt, 1.5-minute cooldown, 50-yard range, charge to your target, striking them for X nature damage, rooting them in place for 1.5 seconds, and inflict X amount of nature damage over 6 seconds to up to 5 enemies in your path. And on top of that, the Pursuit invigorates your soul, healing you for 25% of the damage you deal to your hunt target, so your initial target, lasts for 30 seconds. So let's break it down a bit. 50-yard charge-ish that deals a decent amount of damage to your target, as well as a dot on up to 5 targets, and the 25% damage done as healing only works on the initial target of the hunt. So another one that doesn't really scream Vengeance Demon Hunter as much as Havoc. First of all, as a single target damage / healing cooldown, it's questionable at best with the current tuning at least. The actual damage it puts out isn't great, and the amount of healing we get out of that is not too awesome either. Then if we check it as an AoE ability, it kind of falls flat for me again. How many targets you hit with this can be bothersome, as you need to charge through the mobs in order to get the dot on them. So you'll need to reposition, drag mobs around a bit, and hope for a clear shot for your charge to maximize his damage. A bit bothersome as a tank. Not a super fun ability to play around with, at least not as far as dungeons goes, and on single targets it's even less engaging. Looks dope when you charge though, but yeah, for me it's a hard pass unless they update it some more or retune it a lot. Now, Soul Shape, 1.5-minute cooldown, teleports you 15 yards forward and increases your movement speed by 50%, and you can reactivate this every few seconds to teleport again. Lasts for 12 seconds or indefinitely while in a rested area. Looks awesome, but not super desirable, as we're pretty bouncy and mobile as it is. And that's all for the Covenants. All in all, for M+, it feels like it's between Kyrian and Venthyr. Kyrian's ability is very well designed for dungeons, bursty, instant threat, low cooldown, interacts with talents and legendaries, and gives you souls to nom on. Venthyr has insane AoE burst potential when you pop meta with it, and as a single target ability it does a ton of damage, reduces cast and attack speed by 30%, also on a low cooldown. But I also want to again say it is beta, so tuning can change this a lot. And as far as I know, the hunt has already been reworked a couple of times, and if I remember correctly, they also said that they're looking at Necrolord ability as well. So yeah, this could swing around a lot, which I hope for. Both Night Fae and Necrolords sounds interesting on paper, but doesn't really play out that well, or well at all, at least not for me. Now for the Vengeance Demon Hunter as a whole. They're fun. They're tons of fun to play. Fell Devastation plus Demonic is something I really enjoyed playing with, but overall Vengeance doesn't feel all too different. Most of the changes they've made aren't super impactful to the playstyle, doesn't address the issue with low uptime on active mitigation, and not the greatest defensive toolkit in the book. So they're very much at the mercy of tuning, because the toolkit works, it's just not as good as it could be, but with proper tuning they could be really good even in the state they are currently. But there are a lot of things I'd like for them to change, like mitigation uptime, defensive toolkit, and I personally love the Legion playstyle of fracture spam for souls and spamming Spirit Bomb. Simple, spammy, made souls feel more impactful than Soul Cleave does, so for me I just remove Soul Cleave and work around a Spirit Bomb driven Vengeance Demon Hunter. Too late for such a rework though, but hey, one can dream. Long story short, if you enjoyed Vengeance in Legion and BFA, you will still enjoy them in Shadowlands. Tuning wise, as they are right now, you can do any content with them. They might struggle more in some fights, but overall, if you're not trying to do plus 30 keys, you should be more than fine. And with some tender love and tuning, things can only get better. I personally hope they swing the buff hammer around to Vengeance Demon Hunter. They are so much fun to play, so give me that overpowered flavor of the tier tank tuning. Please. And that's pretty much it. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, it really helps me out, and ring that notification bell. Don't forget to check out my Patreon where you can get access to my Stanky Discord. I'm also streaming on Twitch now, so make sure to check that out. Stanky Gaming. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.